Ever wonder what we humans look like to um, someone who's, well, not human?
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're diving into this fictional conversation
Sure.
between these two aliens,
Huh.
Psylocke and Zorak. And they're observing Earth and its inhabitants.
Right.
It's a chance to kind of get an outside perspective, see ourselves through fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Maybe uncover some surprising insights about, like, humanity's quirks,
Yeah.
triumphs and contradictions.
Right.
Ready to hear what these extraterrestrial observers find so fascinating and maybe a little puzzling.
Yeah, this is a brilliant thought experiment. Taking that step back.
Right.
Seeing ourselves as others might see us can be quite revealing.
Totally. And the first thing that seems to catch these aliens' attention is our relationship with space, or rather our lack of a true galactic presence.
Yeah.
They think it's pretty strange that we celebrate all these, like, minor space achievements when we're still basically confined to our own planet.
Yeah. Psylocke actually points out the irony of humans like barely reaching the moon, but acting as though we've discovered hyperspace. Yeah.
They find it curious that we broadcast our intelligence,
Right.
sending radio waves and all sorts of
Ah.
information out into the universe, but haven't really figured out a way to travel those vast distances ourselves.
It's like boasting about your cooking skills, but never sharing a recipe, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this raises some interesting questions about human priorities.
Yeah.
Why, with all of our ingenuity, haven't we made more progress in interstellar travel?
Right.
Is it a matter of technological limitations or perhaps something a little more fundamental about our nature?
Well, Zorak seems to think it might have something to do with how we treat our own planet.
Okay.
They marvel at Earth's beauty and abundance of resources, yet they're puzzled by our tendency to exploit it and pollute it.
Yeah.
They just can't wrap their heads around it.
They describe humans digging deep into the ground for resources polluting the air, filling the oceans with plastic,
Yeah.
all in pursuit of, as they put it, shiny things.
Shiny things,
Yeah.
right. They even find it strange how we assign value to these material possessions.
It's
Yeah.
like tying our sense of worth to things that ultimately have very little intrinsic value.
Yeah.
It's almost like they see us as children playing in a beautiful garden,
Uh-huh.
too preoccupied with collecting shiny pebbles to appreciate the wonder that surrounds us.
It's an interesting analogy,
Right.
and it highlights a fundamental difference in values.
Yeah.
The aliens, from what we gather, they prioritize knowledge sustainability,
Right.
a harmonious existence within their environment.
Yeah.
Humans, on the other hand, well, we seem to be driven by a very different set of motivations.
And this next part is where I think we might have some explaining to do.
Okay.
Human emotions.
Right.
Apparently they're a complete mystery to these aliens.
Yeah.
Zorak, for example, is particularly baffled by the phrase, "I'm fine."
Yeah, they find it confusing because it seems to carry so many hidden meanings.
Right.
Humans say I'm fine when they're clearly not,
Yeah.
and Zorak can't figure out why we do this. They don't understand why we would mask our true feelings instead of just being direct.
Yeah.
Xylox actually jokes that "I'm fine" is human code for "I'm definitely not fine, but good luck figuring out why."
It is rather ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
We pride ourselves on our complex communication skills,
Uh-huh.
yet we often resort to these vague phrases that obscure our true intentions.
I think it might have something to do with social conditioning.
Okay.
We're taught from a young age to be polite, to avoid conflict, to present a certain image to the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes "I'm fine" is simply the easiest way to navigate those social expectations,
Right.
even if it means sacrificing honesty in the process.
Maybe that's why our aliens find the concept of love even more bewildering.
Yeah.
They describe it as this illogical chemical reaction that makes us act in completely irrational ways.
They're especially amused by our tradition of exchanging diamonds,
Yeah?
which they refer to as shiny compressed carbon as a symbol of commitment.
Right.
They compare it to their own method of expressing commitment on their planet, Zarnak 5,
Okay.
which involves merging cerebral waves.
Wow.
A much more efficient and direct approach in their view.
Their matter-of-fact description of merging cerebral waves
Right.
makes our elaborate rituals of courtship and romance seem almost, well, primitive in comparison. It makes you wonder if, in our quest for romantic expression, we've created unnecessary complexity.
It's certainly an interesting question to ponder.
Yeah.
Perhaps our alien friends have a point, but
Yeah.
I also wonder if their method, while efficient, captures the emotional depth and richness that we humans associate with love.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it speaks to a larger theme that runs throughout their observations.
Yeah.
The inherent contradictions of human nature.
Yes.
They note, for example, how we're divided by conflicts and boundaries here on Earth, yet we yearn for connection beyond our planet.
They observe us fighting over invisible lines we call countries,
Right.
while simultaneously sending messages into space, hoping for a response from intelligent life beyond our world.
So we're desperate to connect with something bigger than ourselves, but we can't seem to get along with each other down here on Earth.
Right.
That's us in a nutshell, isn't it?
It's this duality, this tension
Yeah.
between our desire for connection and our capacity for conflict that makes humans so fascinating to these extraterrestrial observers. They see us as a species full of potential,
Yeah.
capable of great love and terrible destruction, constantly striving for something more,
Right.
even if we're not quite sure what that something more is.
It's a lot to unpack, isn't it?
It is.
But this is just the beginning of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've still got so much more to explore, including the questions these aliens would ask us if they had the chance.
Right.
Stick with us. I have a feeling things are about to get even more interesting.
I think so too. It's fascinating to consider what these aliens would ask us
Yeah,
if they had the opportunity.
right.
They spend a good deal of time pondering this very question.
I bet they'd have a million questions.
Yeah.
I'm especially curious about what Zorak would ask. He seems particularly intrigued by this thing we call society
Right.
and all the strange rules that come with it.
Yes. Zorak is particularly puzzled by our obsession with what others think.
Yeah.
He observes how humans go to great lengths to impress each other, often sacrificing their own happiness and well-being in the process.
Right.
He wonders why we're so driven by external validation, why we place so much importance on fitting in and conforming to societal expectations.
It's almost like we're constantly performing for an invisible audience, isn't it? We
Yeah.
curate our lives on social media. We buy things we can't afford to impress people we don't even like.
Right.
It's exhausting.
And ultimately, it seems to leave us feeling empty and unfulfilled.
Right.
Zorak simply can't understand why we would choose to live this way.
I'm reminded of that old saying, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah,
Maybe that's what Zorak is getting at.
quite possibly. Now, Xylox, on the other hand, has a different question.
Okay.
He's intrigued by our fear of the unknown. He meets that we dream of exploring the stars, of venturing beyond our familiar world, yet we hesitate to take that first leap.
He points out that we send probes and telescopes to the furthest reaches of the galaxy,
Right.
yet we're still hesitant to send humans beyond our own solar system.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we're both drawn to the unknown and terrified by its implications.
It's like a push and pull.
Yeah.
He wonders if it's a lack of courage, a fear of failure, or perhaps something deeper, a subconscious understanding of the risks involved in venturing too far from home.
We did talk earlier about how we humans haven't quite mastered the art of interstellar travel yet.
Yeah.
Maybe on some level we know that the technology isn't quite there,
Uh-huh.
and that venturing too far could have disastrous consequences.
That's certainly a possibility.
Right.
Or perhaps it's simply a matter of priorities.
Yeah.
As Zorak pointed out, we seem to be preoccupied with our earthly pursuits, with accumulating wealth and status, with navigating the complexities of our social structures. Maybe we're simply not ready as a species to dedicate the resources and energy required for true interstellar exploration.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
It is.
Here we are dreaming of the stars, yet we're still grappling with basic issues of inequality, conflict, and environmental destruction here on our own planet.
Right.
Maybe we need to get our own house in order before we can truly reach for the cosmos.
That's a perspective worth considering.
Yeah.
However, it's important to note that both Xylox and Zorak, despite their bewilderment at our many contradictions, ultimately express a sense of hope for humanity.
Yes. They see potential in our curiosity and our creativity,
Right.
in our inherent drive to connect. They recognize that we're a young species, still figuring things out,
Yeah.
and that we have the capacity for great things.
They acknowledge our resilience, our adaptability, our ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges.
Right.
They point to our art, our music, our literature as evidence of our capacity for beauty and compassion.
They even seem to appreciate our sense of humor, our ability to laugh at ourselves, even when faced with the absurdity of our own existence.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Right.
It's almost as if they're rooting for us,
Yeah.
hoping that we'll eventually overcome our limitations and reach our full potential.
And, I think they have a point.
Yeah.
We humans, we're a messy bunch, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we're also capable of incredible things.
Right.
We've created breathtaking works of art. We've made groundbreaking scientific discoveries. We've built societies that, while flawed, are still striving towards a better future.
And perhaps with a little perspective, a little guidance from our extraterrestrial friends, we can learn to harness our strengths, overcome our weaknesses, and finally take that leap into the great unknown.
It's inspiring to think about, isn't it?
It is.
To imagine a future where we've shed our earthly baggage and embraced our role as citizens of the cosmos.
Yes, it
Uh,
is. And I believe it's a future worth striving for.
Totally.
Now, as fascinating as these aliens' observations have been, I think it's time we turn the tables
Oh, okay.
and consider what we as humans would want to ask them.
That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
This entire deep dive has been about gaining a fresh perspective.
Right.
And what better way to do that than to consider the questions we would ask those observing us from afar?
Yeah.
So we've spent this deep dive exploring humanity through the eyes of Xylox and Zorak,
Yeah.
these fictional aliens who've been observing us from afar.
Right.
It's given us a lot to think about.
It really has.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's fascinating how an outside perspective can illuminate aspects of our own behavior
Right.
that we might otherwise take for granted.
Totally. Like, we're so used to the idea of I'm fine as a social nicety
Right.
that we rarely stop to consider how strange it might seem to someone
Yeah.
who isn't familiar with our social norms,
Uh-huh.
or how our rituals of romance, like exchanging diamonds,
Right.
might seem unnecessarily complex
Yeah.
to a species that expresses commitment through a simple merging of cerebral waves.
It's a reminder that there are many different ways of being, of thinking, of experiencing the world,
Right.
and that our way, the human way, is just one of many possibilities.
And maybe, just maybe by considering these alternative ways of being,
Yeah.
we can learn to appreciate our own strengths and weaknesses a little better.
Perhaps we can even find ways to improve, to evolve,
Right.
to become a more enlightened species.
Now, I know we've been focusing on what the aliens have to say about us,
Right.
but this final part of our deep dive is all about your perspective.
Okay.
Imagine for a moment
Yeah.
that you had the chance to ask these extraterrestrial observers one question about humanity.
Okay.
What would it be?
That's a brilliant question.
Right.
It really challenges us to think critically about our own species
Yeah.
and what we find most puzzling or perplexing about ourselves.
Exactly. What aspects of human behavior do you think would most intrigue or confuse an outside observer?
Yeah.
What mysteries of the human experience would you want them to explain?
I'm curious to know what you, our listener, would ask.
Yeah.
Would you want to know why we wage wars despite knowing the devastating consequences?
Right.
Or why we cling to belief systems that divide us, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary?
Maybe you'd ask about our capacity for both great love and terrible cruelty,
Yeah.
or about our obsession with material possessions, even as we yearn for something more meaningful and fulfilling.
Right.
Whatever your question,
Yeah.
I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on it, to really consider what it reveals about your own understanding of humanity.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, this deep dive isn't just about gaining an outside perspective.
Right.
It's about using that perspective to better understand ourselves.
Yes.
It's about recognizing our place in the grand tapestry of the cosmos,
Uh-huh.
with all its wonder, its beauty, and its endless possibilities.
So as we wrap up this fascinating conversation,
Yeah.
I leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop looking up at the stars. Who knows what other perspectives might be out there
Right.
waiting to be discovered.
And that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another cosmic conversation.